And thanks everybody. Just thanks for thinking about this stuff. This is important, and the fact that you guys have been so intentional about thinking about international travel and exchange and those relationships you need to build, I think is really important. So like Wendy said, I went to school here a long time ago. It seems like a long time ago to me, but it also seems kind of like not too long ago in some cases. And I'm actually really mostly excited today because I get to see Danny Chang again. So Danny was not only sort of like a faculty, or pardon me, a staff member. She was also like a guidance counselor and a mom for us when we were doing something we weren't supposed to, and had to check in to make sure we were going sort of down the right road. And
that's
so,
weird, 'cause I'm only 25 years old. So.
Yeah, that's it. It was really strange, but anyway, so it was really cool. I was really happy, really glad to see Danny here. So I went to school here. It was around 99, 2000, and I'd say a couple things. One thing it was the perfect experience at the right time for me. So just in general, I was sort of a kid that had no idea what they wanted to do or where they wanted to go at all. And the direction I got in life, where I decided sort of what I wanted to do, came all at Green River. I mean, that all happened because of this institution and the experiences I had. But one in particular I wanted to share today was as being a part of the soccer team here. And so what was interesting about our team, and by the way, full disclosure, I think Green River won the championship the year before I got here, and then I got here and we went all downhill. So whatever you want to do with that. But when I was here, it was incredibly unique, and it was unlike any other team I'd played on. I'd been on traveling teams and all those kinds of things when I was a young kid. We had 22 kids on our roster, and I think 14 of them did not speak English as a native language and weren't from here. And we were just about the only team in our league that had that diverse a group. And so that was the first experience I had with international culture, where we really learned about other cultures and learned about backgrounds from other kids, and learned sort of about their experiences. We had kids on our team, from Bolivia, Honduras, Mexico, Uruguay, Russia, Bosnia, the Ukraine. We had kids from France. We had kids from Fiji. We had kids from China, Japan, all on one team. And it gave me a sense of perspective. We had some kids that, grew up in very troubling times in Bosnia, that had witnessed, family members, meet an end they weren't thinking they were going to meet, because they have the life was different over there than we had experienced here. Kids that had faced real poverty and real hunger in their lifetime that I had not ever experienced here. And so that context, that culture is something I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. Playing on a team like that, you spend all day, every day together. You end up hanging out and being buddies. You end up being mad at the coach at the same time because we're running sprints because we got shellacked the day before or what have you. So we built these long-lasting relationships, and I'm still in touch with many of those folks today. And this is also the part where I make my pitch to the president that Green River needs to have a men's soccer team again. So there you go. Simple budget, the flick of the pen, right? Very good. So anyway, I think it is a good, it is to some degree a good recruitment tool too, and I was just very proud of that. So that was sort of that's a little bit about my experience here and why I think it was so valuable to be at Green River in particular. I'm glad that I ended up here, not some other place. Briefly, I want to just tell you sort of what we do at the state and what we do around travel. And so I run our economic development team, and we have a few different functions. We do a bunch of rural business development because there's parts of the state that really need that kind of help that don't live in the metropolitan area. And we do some kind of small business lending and focus on small businesses a lot. But specific to international work, there's sort of three areas that we focus on. One of those is foreign direct investment. So we're around the world on just about every continent, working on soliciting investment, marketing the state, saying this is a good place to invest. And so we're making that case to a variety of industries around the world. And that could be, like I said, that could be by form of expanding a manufacturing plant or an R&D facility here in Washington. It also could be just investment. There are some parts of the world that have funds that they need to invest in a safe investment market, and we provide that sometimes. So there's those two parts of FDI. The other part is trade. We focus quite a bit on trade. And so, folks have heard these stats before. We are the most trade-dependent state in the United States. 40% of all jobs in this state are tied to trade one way, shape, or form. And so there's different stats like that over years. That number is going up. It was like 33% when I started doing this stuff about 8 or 10 years ago. So trade is of highest importance, and it won't be a surprise. Folks have read the literature over the years. There's all the globalization. Friedman's done a bunch of literature on this stuff. The World is Flat was a book that sort of opened my eyes a little bit about this stuff about 15 years ago or so. So there's no doubt that it's important for that reason to continue to do that outreach and do that work internationally. On trade specifically, what we have found is really critical, and you guys are a part of this, is raising the profile and keeping the profile raised of the state. And so there's lots of other states out there competing, lots of other countries. There's lots of other places to invest in the world. But the fact that you make a presence, you go to these places, you meet these folks, and you build relationships is a foundation for which everything else is built on. And some countries are different, some cultures are different. For example, if we go to Europe and we're working with firms or investment groups to look at a deal in Washington, sometimes that culture makes them more inclined to want to make a deal sooner. They want to do business quickly. Lots of other markets that are very important to us, particularly in Asia, are not like that, and the Middle East is this way. It really requires sometimes years of cultivating relationships before you can get to the point where you can consummate a deal or work on investment. So we do a lot of that work. I think we'll probably be in China a couple times next year, building relationships. So that's just on the trade part of it. And we bring companies with us. Bjorn knows this because we work together in the UAE. We'll bring companies with us, do some matchmaking, identify target businesses they're going to meet with, and try to work on a deal so they can do some business. The third thing though that we do in addition to FDI and trade is just specifically the relationship building. So I mentioned that a little bit, but we do a variety of work on making connections with institutions. So with colleges, University of Washington certainly, other research institutions here in the state. We're constantly working on building relationships with those folks in other countries that have similar interests. So we see, as time moves on, we see, even more importance on those areas and that international travel. And that's the reason we do it, is because you've got to, like I said, you've got to spend the time, you've got to build the relationships, you've got to cultivate those things. So that's a little bit of sort of what the state does, and I can answer questions about that later. So how did, that's why, that part of it I think is important. How did it affect me personally and professionally? I talked a little bit about sort of personally. Professionally, I've gained kind of a lot of insight on just the context and the way other folks like to do business, the way other folks like to interact, and what's important to them. And so, there are lots of folks that are just looking at a pro forma statement, just looking at, a side-by-side balance sheet to see who's got the better deal. There are some folks, we're working with a couple of very large Japanese firms right now that really appreciate just the development of the friendship. And so, having the governor meet with folks, or having that high-level touch point with a big company there, really adds a lot of value and is really meaningful. So learning about the way different cultures respond to those different kind of mediums of connection, I think is something I've learned quite a bit. And I think the last thing to mention is it's important. This kind of travel, this international exchange is important because it's good for the communities that we're a part of. And so I say that in two different ways. It's good for the local geographic community, It's good for Washington because, like I said, our profile needs to be raised to be able to still take advantage of economic opportunities moving forward. But it's important, culturally too as well. And so the more I think folks and students in particular have opportunities to experience different cultures, to work with them, to travel abroad and be a part of those, it builds experiences, it builds context in your life, and I think it makes you a more well-rounded person as you go out there and you look at careers and you look at employers that are, have values that are aligned with those kinds of experiences. Like I said, I think we're gonna, just see the trend continue. Globalization is not going to reverse itself, and so more and more employers, many of them nearby here, have international components to the work that they do, and it's very clear, as you guys see down here in the Kent Valley with the distribution companies that are doing international travel, sales, and marketing. We're going to see a lot more of that when it comes to software development and IP kinds of products, particularly. We think there's going to be, probably more increase as a percentage of the overall industry sort of output in those industries as opposed to other traditional manufacturing industries. So we're watching that closely. But those are the kinds of things as students look forward and think about, and you guys are talking to folks about what's important, what they have to gain. Those are the kinds of things I think to think about. Is employers in the next 20, 30 years are going to have more and more probability to want folks that have those kinds of backgrounds and experiences. So that's a little bit about that's what we do at the state. Those are some of the things that we think about constantly. The last thing I'll just leave you with is, I talked about, the raising the profile, and it's probably more important right this moment than it ever has been. Because there's uncertainty about sort of what trade policies we're going to have in the next 10 or 12 years or so. So we're thinking about that quite a bit. And so one thing we can do as a state, and you guys are a part of this, everybody here in this room is a part of this, is keep the profile raised, keep the flag raised, and make sure folks know that we're interested and invested in working with these other cultures. Everybody here has a role there and is a leader and representing not just the college, but this community and this state, and that's important. And so the more that we can do that, and then you guys, continue to show leadership on that, probably more than any other of the colleges around, it's critical. And it's just, I'm really happy. I had no idea how much investment the college had here. It makes me really proud to still be a Gator. And I was a Decatur Gator at one point, so probably 5 or 6 years as a Gator. So I've probably got more Gator blood in me than Husky blood at this point. But it makes me really proud. So thank you to you all. Thank you for making sure this is important, and don't stop. Keep going and let us know how the state can help and we can partner on things moving forward. So that's all. Thanks a lot.